Welcome to Real Crime Stories, the podcast that brings you crime stories from around the world. The snow fell relentlessly on that January evening in Philadelphia, muffling the city beneath a blanket of white silence. Inside apartment 603, at the Venice Lofts in the Manayunk neighborhood, a young woman was about to meet a fate so violent, so disturbing, it would ignite a 14-year fight for truth that continues to this day. Her name was Ellen Greenberg. She was 27 years old. Ellen was a first-grade teacher, adored by her students and respected by parents. She was planning a wedding. She was building a future. But on January 26, 2011, something happened inside that sixth-floor apartment that authorities would ultimately rule a suicide, despite Ellen suffering 20 stab wounds, including 10 to the back of her head and neck. This is a death that defies explanation, a ruling that defies logic, and a family's relentless battle against a system that appears determined to keep the truth buried. Ellen Greenberg was born on June 23, 1983 in New York City, the cherished only child of Josh and Sandy Greenberg. Her childhood was filled with warmth, laughter, and unconditional love, the kind that builds quiet confidence. When the family moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Ellen adapted effortlessly, her natural charisma drawing people to her wherever she went. At Penn State University, Ellen thrived. She worked as a lionizer, welcoming athletes and their families to campus and even assisting on the football field. Her energy was contagious. Her smile was unforgettable. After earning her communications degree, Ellen realized speech pathology wasn't the right fit. Instead, she enrolled in night classes at Temple University to pursue teaching. By 2011, Ellen had found her calling as a first-grade teacher at Juniata Park Academy in Philadelphia. Her students adored her. Parents praised her dedication. Ellen was happy. She was proud to be shaping lives, teaching kids, and receiving warmth and love all around. And she would later reveal she had discovered her purpose. Then came Samuel Goldberg. Samuel Goldberg was raised comfortably in Pennsylvania, the son of a successful businessman who owned a confidential document destruction company. By the time he met Ellen around 2007, Sam was working as a producer for NBC Sports, charming, well-connected, and deeply embedded in Philadelphia's Jewish community. Their connection was immediate. Sam swept Ellen away on work trips, including a stop in South Carolina while he covered the PGA Tour. Within months, they were inseparable. To friends and family, they seemed perfect together. After 3 years of being together, Sam proposed on a California beach in June 2010. The wedding was scheduled for August 13, 2011, at the historic Hotel Hershey. But beneath the polished surface, something was changing. Friends noticed Ellen pulling away. Her best friend observed that Ellen spent less time with her own circle and more time with Sam's family. She became unusually secretive about wedding plans. At work, colleagues noticed she rarely wore her engagement ring. She was always giving vague explanations. More troubling were Ellen's private conversations with her parents. In December 2010, just 1 month before her death, Ellen sent a text expressing that she wanted to leave her situation. She told her father she was considering quitting her teaching job mid-year and moving back home to Harrisburg. For a woman who loved her students and fought hard for her career, this was alarming. Ellen began seeing a psychiatrist for anxiety and was prescribed medication. Yet her doctor's notes tell a different story. Whenever Ellen spoke about Sam or the wedding, her face lit up. There were no recorded suicidal thoughts, no warnings of what was supposedly to come. January 26, 2011, arrived under a gray, threatening sky. A powerful nor'easter was closing in on Philadelphia, forcing schools across the city to dismiss early. Around noon, Ellen left Juniata Park Academy as the first snowflakes began to fall, texting a friend to say how grateful she was for the early dismissal. She was just another teacher looking forward to a quiet afternoon at home. At 1 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Ellen stopping at a gas station on Umbria Street near her apartment. She filled her tank, nearly 13 gallons, a practical choice, ensuring her car would be ready after the storm. Ellen was planning for tomorrow. She was hoping that when the weather is down, they could return to school the next day. Ellen arrived home shortly. Inside the apartment, everything appeared ordinary. She prepared fruit in the kitchen, slicing an orange and rinsing blueberries. 2 clean knives sat in the sink. Her laptop was open to wedding planning websites, details for a future she was still actively building. At 4 p.m., surveillance footage showed Sam Goldberg leaving the apartment and entering the building's gym. This was routine. He worked out in the gym when he was less busy. At approximately 6 p.m., Sam returned to the 6th floor. He inserted his key into the apartment door. It opened only a few inches, then stopped. The swing bar latch was engaged from the inside. Ellen wasn't answering her phone. She didn't respond to Sam's knocking. Frustrated, Sam began texting her message after message. His tone quickly escalated, demanding she open the door, asking what she was doing, growing angry, insisting she'd better have an explanation for locking him out. Security footage shows Sam alone in the hallway. He spoke briefly with the building's doorman, Phil Hanton, asking for help breaking down the door. Hanton refused, citing building policy, but offered to call the police. Sam declined. He said he would handle it himself. Using his shoulder, Sam forced the door open, ripping the screws from the swing bar latch. The door itself wasn't damaged, only the lock gave way. Sam stepped inside. What he encountered would become the center of 14 years of questions, investigations, lawsuits, and controversy. At that point, Sam Goldberg placed a frantic call to Philadelphia's police department. The operator's voice was calm and methodical. Sam was anything but. He said he had just walked into his apartment and found his fiancée on the floor, blood everywhere. The operator asked routine questions. What's the address? Is she breathing? Where is the blood coming from? Sam said he didn't know. He said he was looking at her but couldn't see anything broken. He mentioned her face looked a little purple. Trying to make sense of the situation, the operator asked if Ellen might have fallen. Sam suggested she may have slipped, saying there was blood on the table. The dispatcher instructed him to check whether Ellen was breathing, to see if her chest was rising and falling. Sam said he couldn't see any movement. Following protocol, the operator began giving CPR instructions, warning Sam he might need to move Ellen's body. Then, more than 2 minutes into the call, Sam made a sudden discovery. He exclaimed that Ellen had stabbed herself. The operator paused and asked him to repeat that. Sam clarified, saying she had fallen on a knife, that there was a knife sticking out of her heart. The dispatcher asked if the knife was still in her chest. Sam said yes, quickly adding that he hadn't removed it. Asked how far the knife had penetrated, Sam estimated it was deep, 3 or 4 inches, a long knife. The operator firmly instructed him not to touch anything. Emergency responders arrived immediately. They found Ellen Greenberg on the kitchen floor, her back propped against the lower cabinets near the stove. She was fully dressed in a dark zippered hoodie, gray sweatpants, and tan Ugg boots. A white towel was clutched in her left hand. Her right hand rested in a loose fist. A pair of eyeglasses lay nearby. Protruding from her chest, buried nearly 4 inches deep, was a 10-inch serrated kitchen knife. Ellen's body was cold. Her fingertips were blue. The blood around her had already coagulated. Paramedics immediately recognized she had been dead for some time. After examining her at the scene, Ellen Greenberg was pronounced dead. What the first responding officers didn't yet realize was the full extent of her injuries. Ellen had suffered more than 20 stab wounds. 10 were to her chest and abdomen. 10 more were on the back of her head and neck. She also had at least 11 bruises in various stages of healing scattered across her body. Despite this evidence of extreme violence, a decision was made that would permanently compromise the investigation. Ellen's death was ruled a suicide. No crime scene was preserved. No evidence was properly secured. The apartment was not treated as a potential homicide scene. Sam Goldberg, surrounded by friends and family who arrived quickly, was cooperative with initial questioning. He was never handcuffed, never separated, never treated as anything other than a grieving fiancé. By the next morning, that conclusion would be questioned. But by then, it was already too late. On January 27, 2011, Dr. Marlon Osborne conducted Ellen Greenberg's autopsy at the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office. What he documented would become the foundation of a legal battle that continues to this day. The injuries were extensive, 20 stab wounds in total, repeated penetrations to the chest and abdomen, and then the wounds that seemed impossible to explain away, 10 stab wounds to the back of Ellen's head and neck. One wound was so deep it severed her spinal cord. The bruises told another story. 11 contusions in varying stages of healing, some fresh, others days or weeks old, suggesting a pattern over time. Dr. Osborne made his initial determination. Ellen Greenberg had been stabbed by another person. The manner of death, homicide. For Ellen's parents, Josh and Sandy Greenberg, who rushed to Philadelphia from Harrisburg, the ruling made devastating sense. Their daughter had not been suicidal, she had been murdered, and the investigation, at least initially, would focus on finding her killer. Then something highly unusual happened. Members of the Philadelphia Police Department contacted the medical examiner's office to dispute the homicide ruling. A hastily arranged meeting followed, bringing together Dr. Marlon Osborne, his supervisor, medical examiner Sam Guilin, police detectives, and representatives from the district attorney's office. Both Dr. Osborne and Dr. Guilino would later testify that such a meeting was unprecedented in their careers. During that meeting, police argued that Ellen's death was a suicide. They pointed to the apartment door, claiming it had been latched from the inside, with Sam Goldberg locked out. They stated a building security guard had been present when Sam broke down the door, confirming the swing bar latch was engaged. There were no signs of forced entry from the balcony, they said, and the snow outside appeared undisturbed. According to police, no one else could have been inside the apartment. Under mounting pressure from law enforcement, Dr. Osborne made a decision he would later regret. On April 11, 2011, Ellen Greenberg's manner of death was officially changed from homicide to suicide. Josh and Sandy Greenberg didn't learn about the reversal through official notification. They learned about it from the media. Without explanation, their daughter's murder investigation had been shut down. Ellen's death certificate would now and forever read, suicide. The Greenbergs refused to accept it. In the weeks and months that followed, Josh and Sandy began investigating Ellen's death themselves. What they uncovered was a cascade of inconsistencies, procedural failures, and evidence that contradicted the suicide ruling at nearly every turn. First, there was the swing bar latch and the security guard. Police had told Dr. Osborne that building security was present when Sam broke down the door, an assertion that became central to the suicide determination. If Ellen had been alone, locked inside, how could anyone else have harmed her? But surveillance footage told a different story. The video clearly showed Sam Goldberg alone in the hallway outside apartment 603. Building doorman Phil Hanton later signed a sworn declaration stating unequivocally that he did not accompany Goldberg to the 6th floor and was not present when the door was forced open. The foundational claim supporting the suicide ruling was false. More troubling still, forensic analysis of the swing bar latch revealed it could be manipulated from outside the apartment. Security experts demonstrated that the lock could be engaged by someone exiting and pulling the door closed in a specific way. The locked door proved nothing. Then there was the call to the police department. Linguistic analysts and investigators who reviewed the recording found it deeply concerning. Sam Goldberg's account shifted repeatedly. He initially suggested Ellen had fallen or hit her head. Only after more than 2 minutes did he mention the knife protruding from her chest. For someone who had just broken down a door and discovered his fiancée surrounded by blood, this omission was staggering. The Greenbergs hired independent forensic experts. Their conclusions were damning. Dr. Cyril Wecht, a renowned forensic pathologist, stated that Ellen's death was strongly suspicious of homicide. He emphasized the near impossibility of self-inflicted stab wounds to the back of the head and neck, particularly one that penetrated the spinal cord. Bloodstain pattern analysts determined the blood evidence was inconsistent with self-infliction. The position of Ellen's body, propped upright against kitchen cabinets, raised serious questions about how she could have stabbed herself repeatedly and then arranged herself in that position. Most disturbing of all, some wounds appeared to have been inflicted after Ellen's heart had stopped. Dr. Lindsay Emery, a neuropathologist who examined tissue from Ellen's cervical spine, found evidence that at least one neck wound showed no active hemorrhaging, indicating Ellen may have already been dead when the injury was inflicted. A dead person cannot stab herself. The bruises told another story. 11 contusions in varying stages of healing suggested repeated trauma over time. Some were fresh, others were days or weeks old. Independent pathologists reviewing photographs described the pattern as consistent with ongoing physical abuse. Ellen's psychiatric records further undermined the suicide ruling. While investigators emphasized her anxiety and work stress, her psychiatrist's detailed notes painted a very different picture. Ellen showed no suicidal ideation. In fact, her mood consistently improved when discussing Sam or the upcoming wedding. These were not the behaviors of someone preparing to end her life. As the Greenbergs continued digging, a larger truth emerged. Ellen's death had never been properly investigated. From the moment police decided it was a suicide, the crime scene was catastrophically compromised. On the night of January 26, 2011, officers left the apartment after the medical examiner's investigators departed. Without securing the scene, without preserving evidence, and without treating Ellen Greenberg's death as the possible homicide it clearly was. Police did not secure the apartment as a potential crime scene. They did not preserve evidence. They did not process the space for fingerprints or DNA beyond the most cursory examination. But the real controversy began the following morning. On January 27, building property manager Melissa Ware received a phone call from a male relative of Sam Goldberg requesting access to apartment 603 to retrieve personal items for the funeral. Ware contacted the Philadelphia Police Department to confirm whether entry was permitted. Police gave their approval. That same morning, Sam's uncle, James Schwartzman, entered the apartment. This was no ordinary relative. Schwartzman was the chairman of the Pennsylvania Judicial Conduct Board, one of the most powerful legal figures in the state. Inside the apartment, Schwartzman removed Ellen's iPhone, her personal laptop, her work laptop, and Sam's laptop. With that single act, the chain of custody for some of the most critical evidence in the case was irreparably broken. It didn't stop there. Police advised Ware to hire a crime scene cleanup crew. By the time Philadelphia homicide detectives obtained a search warrant on January 28, 2 days after Ellen's death, the apartment had already been professionally cleaned. Blood evidence was gone. Any trace DNA was destroyed. The scene had been returned to its pre-death condition. When detectives finally demanded the electronic devices from Schwartzman, They were turned over on January 29. By then, the devices had been in the possession of Sam Goldberg's family for nearly 48 hours, ample time for data to be accessed, reviewed, or deleted. As the Greenbergs dug deeper, they uncovered troubling information about Dr. Marlon Osborne himself. Internal records revealed that in 2012, his supervisor had written multiple memos documenting serious errors and discrepancies in Osborne's work, some described as very severe, with potentially grave consequences. This was the pathologist whose revised opinion had closed Ellen Greenberg's case. Josh and Sandy Greenberg refused to let their daughter's death fade into obscurity. In October 2019, they filed a civil lawsuit against the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office and Dr. Osborne, seeking to change Ellen's manner of death to homicide, or at minimum, undetermined. The lawsuit forced the release of thousands of pages of documents that had remained hidden for years: police reports, internal emails, autopsy photographs, and medical examiner communications. What emerged was deeply disturbing. In 2018, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro assumed control of the case from Philadelphia authorities. Over several years, the Greenbergs provided his office with more than 10 gigabytes of new evidence, detailed forensic analyses, 3D reconstructions of each of the 20 stab wounds, and sworn depositions from medical examiner officials. The family waited. In 2019, Shapiro's office announced it was closing the investigation, citing computer searches allegedly suggesting suicidal ideation. The Greenbergs were devastated. Then, in 2022, independent researchers made a startling discovery. Attorney General Shapiro had personal connections to both Sam Goldberg's family and to James Schwartzman. The appearance of a conflict of interest was impossible to ignore. Under growing public pressure, the case was transferred to the Chester County District Attorney's Office. After review, the DA announced in November 2024 that prosecutors could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime had occurred. The investigation was declared inactive. Sam Goldberg was never named a suspect. He was never charged. Though he cooperated with initial questioning, the investigation was so limited that meaningful interrogation never took place. In 2014, just 3 years after Ellen's death, Sam married Caroline Schnee in a lavish ceremony at New York City's Plaza Hotel. Today, the couple has children and lives a quiet life. Sam works as a freelance senior producer and has never publicly addressed the mounting calls for accountability in Ellen Greenberg's death. For 13 years, Dr. Marlon Osborne stood by his amended ruling that Ellen Greenberg died by suicide. Then, in February 2025, something extraordinary happened. As part of a settlement in the Greenberg family's lawsuit, Osborne submitted a sworn statement acknowledging that, after reviewing additional information uncovered over the years, it was now his professional opinion that Ellen's manner of death should be classified as something other than suicide. The statement sent shockwaves through the true crime community. Following Osborne's reversal, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office agreed to re-examine the case. But in October 2025, hopes were crushed once again. After a comprehensive review, the chief medical examiner upheld the original ruling. Suicide. Yet the questions remain, and they refuse to fade. How does a person stab themselves 10 times in the back of the head and neck? How does someone sever their own spinal cord? Why were there 11 bruises on Ellen's body in various stages of healing? If Ellen was suicidal, why did she fill her gas tank for the coming days? Why was she planning meals, browsing wedding websites, and texting friends normally? Somewhere in Philadelphia, someone knows what really happened inside apartment 603 on January 26, 2011. Someone knows how a vibrant 27-year-old teacher, planning a wedding, building a future, ended up on her kitchen floor with 20 stab wounds and a knife embedded in her chest. Until that truth comes to light, Ellen Greenberg's death will remain what it has always been. A mystery that defies explanation, a ruling that defies logic, and a tragedy that demands answers. Thank you for listening to Real Crime Stories. Share your thoughts on the story, like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next episode, stay vigilant.